All right. Great. Wait,
Good
Adam,
evening. And
sorry.
welcome to tonight's live online author event, okay, with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Katie from Greenlight, and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with Jen Winston presenting her new book, Greedy, Notes from a Bisexual Who Wants Too Much. They will be talking with Adam Kurtz, whose new book, You Are Here for Now, A Guide to Finding Your Way, also comes out on the 19th. So you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Jen, Adam, and the team at Atria Books and Tarcher Perigee for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Before we get started tonight, there are just a few housekeeping things to go over. In our Zoom webinar, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and there are a couple of different ways that you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the authors and to interact with fellow attendees. So if you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that in the Q&A module, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program, so please make sure you're putting your questions there and not in the chat. And importantly, tonight's featured books, Greedy and You Are Here for Now, are available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at our Fulton Street and Flatbush Ave stores, where you can purchase Jen's book and pre-order Adam's and buy many others on site. You can also order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup at the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. I'll be dropping the buy links in the chat in just a moment. Also, Jen will be stopping by our store to sign copies of the book so you can get a signed or even personalized book by request while supplies last. Just make sure to indicate your signed copy request in the order comments field at checkout when ordering online by 11:59 p.m. tonight, or look for signed copies when you visit the store. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. And now to introduce our readers for tonight. Adam J. Kurtz is a designer, artist, and speaker. His previous books, One Page at a Time, Pick Me Up, and Things Are What You Make of Them, have been published in more than a dozen languages. His offbeat creative work has been featured in Nylon, Adweek, Vice, The New Yorker, and more. Adam's forthcoming book, You Are Here for Now, is a candid collection of essays and artwork full of reflections, encouragement, and insights on the theme of personal transformation, a touchstone for seekers, graduates, creatives, and anyone trying to figure out what's next. Adam will be speaking with Jen Winston. Jen is a writer, creative director, and bisexual. Jen runs a monthly newsletter called The Bi-Monthly. Their work bridges the intersection of sex, politics, and technology, and has been featured by the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, CNN, and more. Jen is passionate and about unlearning and creating work that helps others do the same. She lives in Brooklyn with her partner, dogs, and iPhone. Jen's new book, Greedy, Notes from a Bisexual Who Wants Too Much, comes out tomorrow. Greedy was called a well-reasoned and entertaining affirmation of gender fluidity by Kurtz Books, as well as provocative and profound, funny and frank by Oprah Daly. Greedy shows us that being bisexual is about so much more than who you're sleeping with. It's about finding stability in a state of flux and defining yourself in your own terms. In the book's hilarious and whip-smart collection of essays, offering an intimate look at bisexuality, gender, and of course, sex, Jen takes us inside their journey of self-discovery, leading us through stories of a childhood girl crush, an onerous quest to have a threesome, and an enduring fear of being bad at sex. Jen and Adam are going to start us off with readings from their books, and then they'll be talking with each other and with all of you. We're going to start off with Adam. So Adam, please take it away.
Thanks, Katie, for the introduction. Jen, it's so good to see you. Congratulations. The book is out tomorrow.
I cannot wait, and I can't wait for yours to be out in the world too. It's just, this is surreal. While that intro was happening, I was like, oh my God, this is an author event. Like it was just—
Yeah, it's your author event. And we have so many points of alignment that we'll totally talk about. The fact that our books are coming out within 2 weeks of each other is like almost not a surprise when we compare everything else.
Totally.
So I'm gonna read a chapter from my book. It's essays and art, so it's actually quite short. And this chapter is called Bad News Pairs, because I can't resist a dad joke. Sometimes I get too caught up in my phone and all the terrible things happening in the world. I open the phone and yes, sure, I feel connected to my friends and the specific blend of opinions I've invited into my feed, but there's an overwhelming amount of news that is hard to digest and a pervasive low-level feeling of panic and dread. I have felt this regularly for a few years and have taken some steps to mitigate, such as turning off all news media push notifications on my phone and occasionally muting the sources of information that I need a break from. The reality is not that bad things have suddenly started happening with alarming frequency, although in some ways the results of our actions as a whole, such as ignoring climate science, have absolutely brought us here. The truth is that humans have long been completely terrible to each other. Corporations have put profits over people, and some of us have been turning a blind eye to the suffering of others. Whether this is a conversation we're all having or not, these things are occurring, and now we're seeing more of it. Technology has made capturing and distributing information incredibly easy, and so we are witnessing, sometimes in real time, crimes against humanity. That's not the right time to laugh. We are witnessing, sometimes as it happens, people dying, suffering, or causing harm to others. And there's so much of it, and it's all around us, and it can be overwhelming. And so at a certain point, the impulse is to just log off. The impulse is to disconnect and shut down. What's most healthy for you right now and what's most healthy for all of us in the long term may not be the same thing. It's my feeling that taking some time away from the endless news cycle is helpful and sometimes necessary, especially if you're in close proximity to the subject. Basically, if you're feeling particularly overwhelmed, opt out. Take the time you need, and once you feel safe again, come back in. For most of us, the endless cycle of sadness, outrage, desire to take action, manageable action, keep moving, is unsustainable. That pent-up rage, tight shoulders, and clenched jaw help nobody and take years off your own life. There has to be a balance. One thing to remember is that good people are out there. Good things are happening. While outrage tends to spread faster, good news exists too. In fact, it's often not newsworthy at all, because by definition, the commonplace activity that is ever present around us isn't news. There's overwhelmingly so much goodness in the everyday experience of being alive. So many positive interactions and occurrences in our communities that is simply not reported to the same degree. So we focus on the things that need changing, or the sensational headlines that blend fact with emotion for the sake of shock entertainment, and forget that everyday people are doing everyday things. Every single day, someone is saying something positive to someone else out of kindness or gratitude. Every single day, someone is doing one small action that betters another person's life, even if they don't know it. Every single day, people are preparing meals for the ones they love. Every single day, people are going to work, even if they'd rather not, to care for, impact, or better other people's lives. Every single day, you are doing some good, even if you don't think about it that way. Opting out of the constant stream of negative for a bit doesn't mean pretending it isn't happening. Your bubble might feel safe for a while, but it will always, always burst. Bubbles are beautiful, iridescent, floaty magic, but incredibly thin and literally empty. The bubble is not sustainable. It's a wonderful place to visit, to feel temporarily childlike, assuming you had a pleasant childhood. But there is an expiration date. If you need a reprieve, allow it, but keep one eye open to the reality on the other side of your rainbow perimeter, because even a bubble has to exist in space, and space is complicated. The most sustainable solution I can think of is one where good vibes and bad vibes and mid-range okay vibes coexist. It's only when all our vibes can vibe together that we can ever truly reach vibe equilibrium, not a temporary bubble, but a novelty mold of fruit and cream and hope and fear suspended in red jello forever. This unfortunate dessert is the closest thing to reality as we know it, a mixed bag of good and bad that has to be acknowledged equally, because a little bit of everything is happening at all times. You can pick around and eat your favorite fruits first, but eventually you'll be left with nothing but a soggy pile of canned pear slices, and you'll have to eat those too. Thank you.
I'm trying to snap, but I just got my nails like half done, so I can't really snap it.
I'll take it.
You have so much wisdom in like every sentence. I love it.
I can't wait to hear what you're going to read from your book, which I read in one day. I just sat down and I just read it, and I was like,
I did
give it to me, give it to me.
I did the same to you. Okay, so I'm going in the spirit of the internet, which part of which was sorely missed today from all of our hearts and iPhones.
Pour one out for Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. I'm going to read from a chapter called Cuffed Jeans and Feeling Seen, which is about the things that we call biculture on the internet. I'm very nervous. It's my first reading. I don't know if I can do it with as much like zeal as you did, but I'll try. I'll try to channel like the audiobook director who was like, "You got this," in
your ear, just like,
yeah. Okay.
Yes, but now like you care more.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
I hated that. Okay, sorry.
I'm sure it was great. Okay. Since there wasn't much to do in 2020 besides fixate on the future, I've already played out an exchange I'll someday have with my kids. When these children inevitably climb onto my lap and ask how I spent quarantine, I'll respond, "Kids, it was a trying time. While healthcare and essential workers fought tirelessly, Mommy became a grandmaster playing the app version of Hasbro's Risk. She got drunk exactly once when the United States elected a mediocre Democrat, and she had a mental health crisis trying to find purpose under capitalism, which drove her to domesticity and inspired her to have you. There was one high point of my pandemic that I probably won't mention to my kids, mostly because it involved Twitter, and I'm sure that future parenting books will advise against bringing up the internet whatsoever. But between you and me, I did smile for a few hours that year after seeing a viral tweet by @TheCherryGhoul. The tweet read, "Bisexuals will be 20 minutes into a movie and type in cast of on Google," and it shook me to my core. That might seem dramatic until you hear the context. I saw this tweet while Netflix's The Lovebirds played in the background, moments after I Googled the film's entire cast. In disbelief, I double-checked Chrome and sure enough found my browser still open to Kumail Nanjiani's IMDb. Then I glanced at the TV and noticed the film was exactly 20 minutes in. Reader, I gasped. Logically, I understood that looking up the cast of a movie was part of the modern human condition. Rationally, I knew that many people went down trivia rabbit holes, no matter who they liked to sleep with. But emotionally, I was swept away. I felt seen, as if this tweet had been written just for me. This was not the first random trait ascribed to bisexuals, nor was it the first that we'd accepted with open arms. Somewhere in the 2010s, an idea took off that bi people wore cuffed jeans. I'm literally wearing cuffed jeans right now, I should say. In 2019, on a particularly nasty winter day, @Sean V. Conway tweeted a request to pray for all bisexuals' exposed ankles in this bitterly cold time. By the end of that year, the internet had so embraced cuffed jeans as a marker of bisexuality that many teens actually used their pant legs as a method of coming out. This usually came to life through TikToks that felt like low-budget dating shows, the formula being call your crush, cuff your jeans, make out, go viral. Cuffed jeans are biculture, but that's not all. Finger guns, biculture. Bob haircuts, biculture. Lemon bars, biculture. Sitting in chairs wrong, some say it's gay culture, but according to Reddit and my lower back, it's biculture. That'll be all for me right now.
I love that chapter so much, and it's early in the book, and when I read that chapter was when I started to feel really seen. And then I was sort of like, you're like really in your groove and your voice, and I was like, I don't know her, but I know her. Or I don't know them, but I know them. And I started just feeling really connected. And then it was like, all right, boom, 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 I'm reading this.
Yay.
I think that sitting in chairs wrong is actually gay culture, but we're gonna spend the next 45 minutes fighting about it.
We can debate on it. I am sitting, honestly, kind of normally, but I can weird it up just to mark my territory here. But I have some questions for you. Cool if I launch into them?
Yeah, shit, okay.
I think, I think that some of them might be things that or at least the first one might be something that we could talk about, like as a collective.
I love that.
Okay, so the genre of memoir, or like the personal essay, which is like, you could say it's like one of the most narcissistic things a person could do, is like think that our voice deserves to be heard. But it's also obviously has a lot of power, especially when you're a queer person and when you're talking about queer stories and when you're talking about like things like mental health that are really, really important. So I wanted to ask, what made you want to write about yourself? Do you have any misgivings with it, in this book specifically. And then like, yeah, I guess how do you feel about memoir in general? Like, what's your relationship to it?
So I'm not surprised this is your first question, because I will say that when I was reading your book, there were moments when you were acknowledging like almost that question of how dare I be writing this? I'm writing it, but how dare I? Here's what else you should read, but keep reading this because I'm going to tell you what else you should read instead. And while reading that, I felt like I got a peek inside of your brain where I was like, this is someone who has an experience to share and understands sort of how to share it with the people that could really benefit from it, but also understands that there is only so much space in the world and they don't want to take up too much. Or if they are going to take space, they're going to make sure to shine that light around. And so I felt really comforted reading that, because it felt like I was reading a book from someone who had brought context and awareness to the book. And it made it a lot easier to read about someone I don't know. You know, for Jen's friends who are in here, I'm sure that it's a different experience because you're reading and you're like, ooh, who is that a pseudonym for? Do I know this story? But as a total stranger, that's what kind of brought me in, where I was like, okay, I get this person and now I'm here for it. For me, I don't typically write about myself at all. My books and journals are really focused on the reader or the writer as sort of art therapy tools or self-help sort of guides. And with this book, I was really encouraged by my editor and my agent to, you know, look within a little bit and sort of connect the dots. Because at a certain point, if you are just delivering lessons or messages without context, without standing up and saying, I'm this person, here's where it comes from, this is why it's important to me, then it starts to feel like preaching. And so I found it very scary to speak with so much vulnerability. And even as I read your book, I was like, holy shit, like Jen's just putting it out there. And I definitely have not done that in my book, which is a little bit more broad and about the reader. So that's my answer, but I just want to say you are extremely brave. And I wonder how you feel about having done that. Did you panic about it? Were there people that you had to get permission from? Or did you feel compelled to let people know in advance? Is there anyone that you told to like, don't read this, or anyone that you like low-key hope doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, my book is dedicated to my parents who promised that they wouldn't read it, and I circled the chapters they could read, and they've read those chapters because they're big fans and like nice supporters. I wouldn't be surprised if they were here, but I just want to say I like loved the way that you took kind of the personal essay in your book. I think you found like a new space for it, where it almost is this sort of like it's just a collection of like wisdom is how I really found your book. And I just think like every single sentence, like I started like highlighting and screenshotting because I don't have the physical copy yet. But I was like,
it's coming. I swear it's coming. It's because I have
coming,
it right here.
I mean, it's gorgeous. Even the PDF is gorgeous. And so I was like highlighting and screenshotting, and I just kept doing that because like every sentence is such a kernel of wisdom, and obviously the ones you've like pulled out is just really great. And I had a proposal a long time ago that was more focused like overtly on unlearning, because that was like a lot of the work that I have done and was doing at the time. And I had designed it out kind of like a coffee table book. Like I had designed it so it was, you know, an aesthetic book, but it almost read like a textbook. And I think it's really difficult for like personal writing to thrive in that environment, because I still wrote memoir and like wrote personal essays, so it didn't really work. What I was trying to accomplish was like not working. My agent at the time was like, yeah, but like change this whole thing. But I think you really nailed that. So I just wanted to say, I think it's a very unique thing. Okay, yeah, so writing memoir is like, it's fun. I mean, it's always been fun for me. I saw a tweet today that was like, when I'm writing fiction, I know what it's about, but I don't know what happens. And then me, when I'm writing nonfiction, I know what happens, but I don't know what it's about. And I think that's like totally how I identify as a writer, is like having trouble in both of those areas.
That sounds like life to me. Like
Totally.
that tweet is very poetic.
I gotta find out who it's by, because I'm gonna quote it a few more times, I'm sure.
It's
But
perfect.
yeah, but the putting a memoir actually into the world, like I've written it in writing workshops and like on my own, but actually like putting one into the world where like real people are in it, and like it's, if it comes like where a lawyer has to read through and be like, well, do you think that this is the correct word for the type of sexual assault? Because if not, like we might have a case, you know, so I have to like adjust what I'm calling someone who sexually assaulted me. Like that was a really challenging part of the process. Getting permission from like random people from my past to be featured, having a bunch of random people from my past text me because they thought they were going to be featured, and having them be right, even though I changed their name. That's been super interesting. But I did have to have a few people, like I had my partner, Brinley, had to sign a release. My friends, Ben and Joey and Jamie, all had to sign releases. Eden, people who are like close to me in my life, I let them read the parts that they were mentioned in, even though the text changed so much from that time still. So I'm just grateful that they would sign such a like living document. But yeah.
Having read your book,
go
I
ahead.
feel like your friends had no trouble signing that, and your partner had no, like, I felt like I was getting to know them. And also by the time that you meet Brinley, I'm like so happy for you, where I'm just like, fucking finally, you know, like that is such a moment in this book. I know that you're a real person, but to me, like you're a character from your book.
No, it's good. I'm glad that it reads as a character, because I think that's another thing that was hard, like, is separating yourself from your character. And like I was learning a lot about character work like on the fly as I wrote this book, because I was like, these characters like need to be more established, and like what would my character do? And so I was like, really, I had some quote from Mary Carr like written on a whiteboard in my office that I just kept being like, okay, these are the things that make strong characters, and like doubling down on it. So I'm really happy to hear that. But it's also strange when someone comes alive on the page and then it's not necessarily like exactly how the person is in real life. And then also like you don't want to give too much detail on the page, because you need people to imagine what that person is like based on the people they know. So I had to do a lot of pulling back off of specifics, because I just had all these like random specifics about my friends that almost made them too, like, it was too niche at times. So I'm happy that they felt real, and that you were happy for me. I was also happy for me when I started reading Brindley. Yeah.
I will say that there are moments of the book that do feel niche, but like rang stupidly true for me. Like, first of all, I'm pretty sure that we lived within 3 blocks of each other until I left New York. Because I was on South 5th and Havemeyer, and then I was on South 3rd and Havemeyer.
Okay, wait, this is super embarrassing, but like I knew that. When you DM'd me about this the other day, I was like, I'm gonna wait to tell you this during the convo. I knew that because I think we might have worked at BuzzFeed at the same time, but I saw you on the train on the M sometimes, and I was like, oh my God, that's that amazing illustrator. And then I would go to another car. Yeah.
Did we work at the media company at the same time?
I don't know why I didn't name it. I like named a bunch of, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Is it because you had to sign an NDA when you were fired, or is that just me?
That's not just you, but that didn't happen to me. I'm sure that happened to many people.
It's fun to talk about it now. That's wild. Okay, so you knew, but in the book, when you talk about like going to the woods for Mister, I was like, yeah, same, like literally same. And I felt so, that's also why I felt like I related to the characters, because I was like waiting for me to be in the book. You know, I'm like, wait, I feel like I know these people. Are you still in South Williamsburg?
No, now I'm in Crown Heights, but I do miss South Williamsburg. Well, right now
I love that neighborhood.
But Oh, me too. It's so excellent. And I'm really glad that that came through. I hope that the book resonates with people who did not live in like a 3-block radius for me, because I think that that area just so viscerally defines my, like, I guess, mid-20s. And I'm really happy that that party resonated with you. Someone the other day, I'm in like a queer chat at my work, and someone the other day like suggested going to the woods, and I was like, I can never go there again now that I've written an essay about it. Like, I literally can't ever show my face there.
I'm sure that you could. I'm sure that the crowd has totally turned over. Like, I haven't been in so many years, but there was a summer that was like every Wednesday,
Yep.
and such a good vibe. And when you talk about that being one of the first queer spaces, like femme-identified queer spaces that you went to, I was also happy for you with an awareness of like, that's actually a really great entry point. Like, whoever invited you to go there was actually looking out for you,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and not throwing you to the wolves
Yeah.
in some other context.
No, it's true. And I think I just like, I had such a hard time feeling comfortable in any of those queer spaces. And
Yeah.
it's like, it sounds like I'm making a lot of fuss about something that's not that big of a deal, because like in the scheme of things, I have a ton of privilege, right? And like, that is one reason I tried to call that out throughout the book, because it's like, in the scheme of things, this like internal debate I'm having isn't that massive of a
But it's yours, I think
exactly, yeah.
the conversation about privilege that you have in the book is important to acknowledge, but it doesn't deny the fact that you were struggling with your sexual and, to an extent, gender identity for a long time, and your relationship to those things. And that's the thing about being alive, is that everyone's got some shit to deal with, and someone else might think that it's not all that difficult, but it's still your cross to bear. And as is evident in the book, like, you spent many, many years of your life worrying about it, concerned about it, figuring it out, deciding what works, reassessing. That's what's sort of wonderful about, I think, this book existing, is that you are not the only bisexual person in the world. And there are going to be young people who are recommended this book and roll their eyes, and they're like, just because I said I might be bi doesn't mean I need this book. And then actually read it and feel so seen. And that's why I love the cuff jeans chapter, because we're talking about these things that make us feel so seen. And I think that this book is going to do that for people. And as I read it, I was like, if I were to find out that like my cousin might be bi, like I would gift them this book, because I can't sit you down and make you learn that you're okay, but I can totally give you a book that might make you feel that way. So thank you for writing this, despite being so aware of your privilege that you almost could have talked yourself out of it.
Well, thank you. I actually will credit an early editor who was a former writing instructor, who basically in the first rounds of this book, I had like hundreds of pages at the front about privilege and my privilege, and essentially why I shouldn't write the book. And like, I had a 25-page FAQ, like crediting all, it was very dense. It was just like completely different than it is now. But I credit one of my early editors, her name's Diana Speckler, on being like, why are you undermining yourself? Like, she called me out on doing that. And she was like, your story is important and it matters. And like, you can talk about these things, but like, don't let them detract from what you're trying to say. And then she also helped me get more comfortable with the fact that like the privilege, or like, not the privilege, but like I guess you could say like the biphobia and the internalized biphobia that I was dealing with was more cerebral than physical a lot of the time. Although in many cases and in many countries, biphobia is very physical, which is like awful. But in my case, it was much more in my head. And at first when she said that, I was like, great, this is gonna be such a boring book, because it's just gonna be me being like, am I bi? Am I straight? Am I gay? And that kind of is what it is. But I tried to really lean into the work of Shiri Eisner, who talks about using bisexuality as a lens, or bisexuality as a political ideology. And so from that, I was like, it's a lens to see the world. So hopefully that came through. But I
It
also
did.
want
I mean,
to,
you credit her by name multiple times. Like, I think
I
you're so
know.
transparent with your inspirations, which is really important, I think, for a reader in rooting for you. Do you know what I mean? Like when someone just shows up and is like, here's all these things that I know, it's a little bit like, okay, but you really invite people into the process of the work, the process of unlearning and then relearning and re-identifying and reworking and reconfiguring your own self in relation to yourself. And it's just like, you take people on the journey with you, which I think is super important. And something I think about a ton in my work because of the way
Yeah.
that I best learn, right? Like if you sit me down and try to tell me like, here's why bi is okay, no matter what you're trying to tell me, as soon as you sit me down and you're like, you're going to learn something, my brain
Yeah.
turns off. It's like me in school. So to be like, this was my journey and here's who inspired me. And if this part sounds cool, here's their book. And if this sounds cool, here's a link. Making it a
Yeah.
participatory journey and opening yourself up in a vulnerable way, but also opening yourself up potentially to criticism is what enables people to come on the journey with you. And I think you did it very well.
Thank you so much for saying that. I mean, a lot of the reason that I like cite my sources and stuff is from being like reared on Instagram. And when people just steal work, like specifically of like artists like you all the time, and you know, like crediting those original sources and like making sure that those like the people who had the thought first, like it does just like, I mean, selfishly, it does make me look better, but also just in the scheme of things, it's the like right thing to do. And I think within the bi theoretical discourse, there are so few bi theorists. And Shiri is one of them. And Shiri is like the first person whose work really like blew my like a gasket in my mind. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm proud to be bi. And that was the first time I ever felt that. And so it just like, it's like the only thing for me to do, I feel like, is to credit her. But okay, I wanted to also compliment you because
you don't have to do that. It's fine.
But I do want to, because one of your essays really, really moved me. And I'm going to forget the title. But it was essentially Reasons to Stay Alive. That might have been the title.
Yeah, it's straight up a list of reasons to not kill yourself.
Yeah,
which
and yeah,
we sometimes need.
I am someone very close to me is struggling with bipolar and with depression like right now. It's like very volatile and it's something that I can't control or like support well enough from where I live. And also because like I'm being kind of pushed, like the person is like pushing me away, which I'm like, you know, it's a whole situation. But I really loved that chapter because like we don't, like you were so blunt with the facts that this that also I think it followed the chapter. Sometimes people think about dying sometimes.
Yeah.
What was that, the exact title?
Yeah. And it has a little
had
smiley face.
Yeah,
yes. Some people, I mean, yeah, I think that was, you know, the book is really intentionally, it's like that late night life talk that you have with a friend on a couch at the end of a house party. And after 18 months of pandemic, like none of us have had that. And when people are really hurting, like what you're describing, they do push people away. They do. That's how it goes most of the time. And so I wanted to make this little book, and it is, I mean, it's physically, it's like 4 by 6. It's very small. It's thick though. That you could give to a friend who is going through it. And it's not necessarily only about mental health or mental illness and suicidal ideation. That's, you know, one very small segment, but it is so much about figuring out where you're at along the process of being alive, along the journey of transformation, from one version of yourself to the next. And even the title, You Are Here for Now, is totally, you know, this call out of everything changes. And so if you are in the pit right now, if you're in a dark place, things will change. But also, you probably know what you need and you don't have as much time as you think. You know, it's very like TikTok bitch, like you could die. So if you know the answer, why aren't you taking your own advice yet? And this isn't what the book was supposed to be. So we have very different stories of how our books came to be. and I want to talk to you about it because I just found out how quick of a turnaround your book was. I started working on this book at the beginning of 2019. I spent like 8 months developing different pitches as an art book. Then I sold the book at the end of 2019, and then COVID hit, and I turned in a rough draft 5 months late. It became an essay collection, which it wasn't. The title changed, like everything about this book changed because I just said, there's not enough time to make bad art. There's not enough time to put my name on something I'm not proud of. And I almost gave back the advance. I almost was like, you know what? I've made books already. I'm good. I don't have anything that is worth putting into a book right now. And really slowly came back around. Yeah, okay, but so let's switch focus here. You wrote this book in like a year?
Well, yeah, in less than a year, but wait, I just want to say, like, that is such an important thing, is like, that there was another line in one of those chapters that I loved, that was like, you have a lot of time and also not very much time. And you're just like really great at sitting with the duality of things, which I think is hopefully—
It's very Libra of me. It's
yeah.
it's also your birthday this month, right?
Yeah, wait,
are we both Libras? The 19th.
Oh, mine's the 14th. Yay.
Shut up. I'm having a birthday party if you're free on October 19th.
Great, I'm free.
Okay. It's a Tuesday.
Okay, great. As after these 2 weeks are over, I have no plans. But yeah. Okay, great. But I just really loved that because I think, like, for me, I think that's actually a parallel between our two books, because for me, like, being able to sit with the duality of things was like the thesis that I had to like work to come to, of like, you know, multiple truths can exist at once, but like for you, it's just kind of like, you know, sometimes it's in different, like, various lines or various quotes, and it's just like a truth of the world. And it's just really comforting. So I wanted to say that. And I think that aligns with what you were just saying about life is too short to put your name on bad art, because it is. And it makes me think of the quote that's like, art is short, life is long, which is also showing the duality of that. So yeah.
I do want to call out, you know, speaking of privilege, like, it's important for me to say, to even be in a place in my career where I could think about returning in advance is nuts. And, you know, especially for an artist who started making zines in their bedroom and selling them at the Brooklyn Zine Fest, you know, like, I didn't expect to get to a place where I could even have that thought. I, for a long time, was in a place of, I have this client project, it kind of sucks, it's very soulless, I don't like it, and I have to do it because otherwise I can't make rent, because I'm in credit card debt, because I owe back taxes. And it's only in the last few years that I just realized, like, you know what, there are other things I could do than this book that's looming over me, that's not feeling right, and that after a pandemic hit feels completely empty, devoid of any, you know, reality. It was essentially a book about being optimistic and like, hang in there. And it's like, you know, 700,000 Americans are dead because of, like, I don't know, stupidity and greed. Anyway, sorry, I almost started on like a little—
Oh, you're right.
I feel like we're all
Unfortunately,
so
my
close to
title—
just breaking into rant
I
at any
know.
moment.
Yeah, we really are. It's unfortunate that the crossover my title has with capitalism in general. That was something I dealt with throughout, but it's especially—
But you acknowledge that too, and you know, that's the other— we have to exist within capitalism and survive it. And it's not going to be the government saving us; it's going to be us saving each other, and we can't do that unless we can navigate the structures as they stand today on the way to dismantling them.
Yep, it is true.
We need people to, like, you know, worm their way into places and do good things on the inside, right? Like every huge corporation has like a few people working there that are like for example, if I work with a huge company and I get a sweet gig, it's because like someone who works there—
totally.
Yeah, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean, so today while Instagram was down, I became really obsessed with like the 3 people on my feed, like, and I was like, these are my friends now. This is all I have. You were one of them. You were
I'm so glad.
in my stories. Yeah, I was like, let me watch this close friend story. But I was like really just interested in who those people were. And I forget why I brought that up, but
I think
but
it's just a
related.
relevant thing today that happened. Like this video will exist in the future.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to know, future people, is that Facebook Incorporated went down and took with it a number of other companies. Yeah, and that's what happens when you let one company own half of social media.
Yes.
Boop. I didn't notice. I actually had my phone turned off today, which is crazy. It's because I was recording a podcast with a friend and then we got lunch and I forgot to turn it back on. So for the first time in my life, I didn't check Instagram until like 3 p.m. and I was like, oh, it's broken.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. But actually, well, I forget why I brought up the desert or like the friend thing, but I've been thinking about like these people who you are seeing on your feed are like who you're with on your desert island.
Oh my God.
So
yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about desert islands today, and I do want to ask if you could bring one of the phrases or quotes or like kernels of wisdom from your book with you to a desert island or like to start a new society off of, what would it be?
So I'm going to do a very Jewish thing and fully ignore your question by asking you another question, which is, what makes you think I want to save society? I feel like if you know me at all, it's that as soon as the end comes, I'm lying down first. Like, you know what I mean? Like people who are hoarding like cans of beans to weather the storm. I'm like, no, I'm lying in a field and I'm waiting for the asteroid to hit. Like I'm not trying to survive underground. But I think for me, the phrase, things are what you make of them, has been a mantra and an ethos in my life because I come from a very different background. I didn't really have a lot of access to resources or whatever, the stories we tell ourselves about why we're not good enough. And I have found a way to do my thing with what I have access to, which is why, this new book, the art is all made of folded note paper and pencil. It's pencil and paper with me because I believe that we all have access to these ubiquitous tools and things are what you make of them. There's a silver lining there.
It's like,
and that was,
sorry, keep going.
Just that was the title of my last book because that was a phrase that meant a lot to me. And my thing with books is, and this is not a thing to say to a first-time author at their first book event, so I'm sorry that I can't help myself, but there are a lot of books in the world, there's like 500 books at my friend's apartment. And the reality is that not every single book is going to be read by a million people, but even just putting a title and a cover into the world is a way to insert yourself into someone's brain like a pop song. And so if I can get someone to think, oh, things are what you make of them. And we need to talk about the Rodrigo Corral cover because holy shit, you got an iconic cover designer. I don't know how you did that. I know that not everyone is a huge design nerd, but like that's actually a really big deal. It's a really big deal. He wins awards all the time. And the cover is beautiful. It's so good. And when I noticed the deboss on the pencil, I was like, fuck you for that production value because it is nice. It is.
I wanted them, but you got them. So enjoy.
It took me 4 books to get a French flap.
Well, that's
I tried really hard.
Worth it. I will try every time. I mean, yeah,
this is a French flap for anyone watching. It's when the book can continue.
I was frantically Googling what that was when I first got my book deal. I was like, I must like have that, but I didn't know the name. So everyone write that down.
Freedom flaps. No, do you remember that time when, this is like, that's a throwback. If you're young, we used to hate France.
You mean freedom fries? That's what.
Yeah, do you remember that? Was that like a tea party thing?
I'm from Indiana. I remember.
Oh my gosh.
But I also just wanted to say you gave me a really great piece of advice when we first started talking about doing an event together. And it's kind of, you have a line similar to this in your book as well. I was panicking about something that is, I forget what it was. Like it was completely, it might have been not having French flaps. But I was panicking about something very superficial. And you were like, you know what? It's a book, and it's really cool that it gets to exist at all. And I mean, you didn't even realize it was advice, but I was like, oh my God, it is so cool. And I think I've had a really hard time being proud of myself throughout this process, because it is like, I mean, it's so hard. And then, there are like established authors everywhere. And I'm like, how do you guys do this? And like, I have had a day job throughout this process, and it's like, yeah, a whole situation. And it's just been so hard. And so to be able to kind of turn back to that and be like, oh, it is really cool is helpful, So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I will say, and then we'll do our Q&A. I'll say that a lot of authors, from the outside, it seems like, oh, they're a published author, so they're a millionaire now and their life has changed and they have no problems. But actually, it's often very difficult and very scary to be a published author, because publishers put out every Tuesday, over 100 books come out every Tuesday, Tuesday after Tuesday after Tuesday. And so even when you have a book deal with like the world's largest publisher, you're one of hundreds of thousands, and it's easy to feel lost in the shuffle. It's easy to get literally lost in the stacks. There's nothing more humbling than when I went to Barnes and Noble in Union Square on the release day of my last book, and I was like, I'd love to sign my books, please. And they were like, they're in the basement. We didn't bring them up because no one asked for them. There's always that. And so many authors are sort of talking amongst themselves, and I feel like we need a support group. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to read some of these questions here.
Keep going. Go ahead.
Sarabi asks, what did you learn about your book while you were writing your book? I love that.
Question. Yeah, that's an awesome question. Have you written a book? That's like, sounds like a question from someone who's written a book. I mean, something that was weird for me while I was writing my book was I kept having, because I have a lot of stories in my book about like sexual experiences with men, I kept wondering if I was bisexual. That's actually when I wrote the prologue, which is called A Story to Ease the Author's Imposter Syndrome, because I was like, you're bisexual, Jen. Like, it's fine. You're writing a book about it. And I was just still having such imposter syndrome. So that was like confirming to myself over and over again that I was bisexual. And then also I think I learned a lot about my gender while writing it, because I didn't realize that like womanhood would be such a large part of my narrative. Like, I kind of thought that I was like over talking about that. Like, we've moved on. Like, I no longer feel like I want to bring gender into any conversations because I feel like there are binary gender ideas. I just feel like most of it has been discussed at this point. It's no longer like interesting to me, but it just has shaped so much of my experience. And it was like, I was in the house in Vermont that I like wrote about at the very end, because I'm not the kind of author who can write about their life without writing about the process of writing, especially while I'm writing a book in 3 months. I called my partner and I was like, I think that I'm going to write about this. And they were like, that's great. So that was like really solidifying my understanding of my own gender and like feeling a bit more fluid in that. Like, deciding I was going to put that in print was huge for me.
I think that you did a great service doing that, and sort of like putting it in there within the context of, hey, as I do this, as I write everything you've just read, I'm now thinking about this. It's almost like, well, it's an epilogue. I mean, that's what it is. It's perfect. And it just kind of continues the conversation. It's a great way of saying like, hey, like, just because the book's over doesn't mean that like I'm done and have it figured out, which to me is also a way of like acknowledging the privilege without necessarily saying I am, you know what I mean? It's so you both said it and then did it within the context of the book. Melanie asks, I can't believe neither of us asked this.
Wait, you answered the other question.
Oh, I learned that books are great and I'm a very talented artist. Okay, so Melanie asked.
Not wrong, not wrong.
No, I mean, I learned that I had to really take my own advice. And what I keep telling my friends is that I did a thing with this book that I often do, which is I trick myself into doing the work of being a person by making it into my job, because I'm very good at getting my work done and I'm very bad at working on myself. And so making a book that ultimately became about the process of figuring out who you are, while I left New York after a decade to move to my in-laws' house on an island 5,000 miles from here, it really forced me in. It forced me to parse through my identity, who I've been, who I want to be, who I am in the process, and work backwards to create the steps to get there. And a big thing that I was aware of was like, hey, your mental health is not okay. You're actually not okay. And you regularly dispense advice to others, but the reality is that like your brain chemistry has clearly changed and you need to switch up your meds. And then I did. And now I'm like the happiest I've been in my whole fucking life. So I'm very glad that I had the advice so big and in front of my face every day for months until I finally took it. Okay,
Wow.
so
Wait,
Melanie's question though,
sorry.
we got to do it.
Okay, I just want to say I'm also really bad at, I'm good at getting my work done and really bad at being a person. And my partner gave me a suggestion for my next book that kind of like marries these two ideas. And it's about queer parenting. So like as we embark on
Are you
that
gonna have
journey,
kids?
I mean, eventually, like, yeah. So, I mean, maybe, who knows if this will be my next book or my third book, who knows? But it's gonna like be able to, it's gonna be nice to have something that I want to learn, because you have to do so much learning and sitting with it, you know? So
Yeah.
I love that. And you created the perfect book for someone dealing with some heaviness through mental health through the pandemic. So if that was yourself, great.
Thank you. Well, so that's what Melanie's question is kind of about, and I felt us getting there. Who do you hope reads and connects with your book? And I think we both, you know, wrote or completed books during the pandemic when it was so obvious that people were hurting. So this is such a great question. And yeah, I'd love to know like your specific perspective on who's the target audience for this, or who is the target audience but doesn't know it and maybe could be, or you wish someone would give them the book.
Yeah, I feel like, yes, I feel like it was actually really challenging for me to come up with a target audience, like as a marketer, like by trade. I was like, like you can't really market to the bisexuals, sort of per what I was talking about earlier. There's no real like bi culture where like most people, bi culture doesn't aggregate itself. So you can't really like target those people. But
you couldn't just sell it at the Van store?
I mean, very good, very good. I thought I had done all the bisexual jokes, but here we are. But yeah, that I'm gonna take that and use it on another virtual event.
I did a book tour with Vans a couple of years ago where I actually did 3 book events in the shoe stores, and I didn't even mean that when I mentioned it, but self-drag as always.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Maybe it was very random.
Go there on launch day. But yeah, I think my ideal reader is somebody who, I guess it's like my younger self. That's what I was always thinking, is like, what would I need to hear? But it is really challenging when you think in terms of like, how are you going to get this into the hands of these people? Because like, especially with the cover, I was like, how do we get a cover that's like not decidedly gay or decidedly straight, like, and also not one that necessarily uses the colors of the bi flag. Like, I don't really like vibe with those colors that much. It feels a little like, it feels like you have to be out already in order to read something that looks like that. And the book has a lot of stories like theoretically straight relationship stories. So I didn't want to be misleading. So all these questions really came up when I was thinking about the cover and how to position it. And ultimately I just like hired a really, really talented designer and let him figure it out. So that's what happened.
I feel like mission is very accomplished in that it just looks like the book that you see everyone with on the L train until you finally buy it.
I hope so.
I think, it's definitely for bisexual people, or people who might be bisexual, or people who might be exploring their sexual identity or gender identity or relationship to sexuality and gender. But I think it's also for any woman. I think it's also for any alive person. It's for any man who needs to do better, which is all of them, including me. It's for any person that needs to check their privilege without having without asking someone else to do the emotional labor of telling them to do so, I think it's kind of for anyone, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. And definitely with a cover like this, we will be seeing it in flat lays on Instagram. That's happening.
I hope so. I can't wait to do a carousel roundup of
Yes.
flat lays. I can't wait. But okay, how about you?
I think that what I really struggled with during the pandemic was understanding what it means to be essential, because we were talking about essential workers in such concrete terms. And I looked around at my life and my work and what I spend all my time stressed about. And I was like, it's fucking keychains and planners and, pencil topper. Like I basically am a novelty gift brand with a mental health bent, and it doesn't make any sense. And I felt useless. And I felt like I didn't deserve really to be, I don't know, it just felt like I was a waste of space. And then I realized okay, the power is that I'm creating art therapy tools. The power is that I help people help themselves through art. And so I released 50 pages from my journals as a PDF that you could download and print. And thousands of people, used that as a resource, and teachers printed it for students, and art teachers remotely were using it. That happened, and it made me understand okay, I think my power is just falling on the sword and being yeah, I'm actually very fucked up, but here's how I'm coping, and making that into a tool. And that's really what this book is. This is a book of yeah, I don't know either, and here's how I get through. And I think the duality you spoke about is how I cope, is that I'm always assuming the worst, and so that doesn't swallow me up, I also have to remember the best. And God, yeah, if this book can help someone, if someone does make it to the chapters where we talk about the really heavy stuff, and that helps them at least laugh their way through the pain in some way, then that's my ticket to heaven. That'll be my, that's my karma in the world. And that is enough, to mean that I deserve to be here. And I think that your book really accomplishes that too, in a very special way. So thanks for having me on your first book event.
I mean,
huge congrats.
Thank
you got a whole week of events.
I want to say one more thing. I think that my goal with the book was to connect with anyone who needed it, in a similar way. And I actually someone from my publishing team, who I will not name any names, told me that it really connected with them and helped them come out as bi to their friends and family. And I was like, oh my God, then we don't need to release the book. I have accomplished my mission. We can just all take a step back. But I just hearing any type of, I'm sure having people download pages of your journal and having it's, especially now, when everything is, when it's so easy to read the comments and to read everything, any piece of nice feedback goes so far. So I read a tweet the other day that said you should keep a folder of all of your nice things people say to you, so you can look at that folder when you're feeling down. And so I started doing that, and already it's helped me a lot through day literally -1 of the book launch. So
there's so much more positive to come, and don't read the reviews, but I know you will. So
I will.
Everyone, make sure that you leave 5-star reviews wherever you purchase your copy of Greedy.
And You Are Here for Now. Also, I think that we have some questions from our good friend Jeremy Cohen in the chat.
I saw that, but unfortunately we're out of time. Sorry, Jeremy.
Oh, we covered them. Okay, we're out of time. Sorry.
I'm just,
Sorry,
Jeremy, I'll see you on Wednesday.
Great.
Thank you both so much for that fantastic discussion and your lovely readings. It was so great. And everybody in the audience, thank you for joining us. Please don't forget to order your copy of Greedy in store online at greenlightbookstore.com and pre-order your copy of You Are Here for Now. And also don't forget, if you want a signed copy of Greedy, to make sure that you order before 11:59 p.m. tonight, and note in the order comments that you want a signed or personalized copy. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.